Structural organization in animals. Topics to be discussed: animal tissues, morphology and anatomy of the anatomy of earthworm, morphology and anatomy of cockroach and frog. The type study. We use it to say it as type study. So first of all, let's come with the tissues. What is a tissue? Tissue is a group of similar cells having a specific function and origin. The group of cells which are similar in shape, structure and origin we can consider as a tissue. We can say it as tissue. Then we have four types of tissues: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue and nervous tissue. Four types of tissues are there: epithelial, connective, muscular and nervous tissue. Let's see one after another. Epithelial tissue. It has a free surface which faces either body fluid or the outside environment. That epithelial tissue, one side it lies on basement membrane. The epithelial tissues, one side they lies on basement membrane and other side they are going to be the free. So that free surface may be face the either body fluids when they are present as the inner lining or outside environment. In case of skin we are talking about, it covers lines the body or body parts. That we have a beautiful sentence for epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue which covers all the external and internal organs externally and internally. Means if you take an internal organ, stomach, the stomach, outer lining of the stomach is going to be the simple squamous epithelium. We call it as peritoneum. That is the epithelial tissue. And inner lining of the stomach is going to be that simple columnar epithelium. That means internal organs covered externally and internally by epithelial tissue. External organs even like the skin, the outermost layer is the stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. Inner lining of body wall, parietal peritoneum is a simple squamous epithelium. So that's why we can say all the epithelial tissues which covers all the external organs and internal organs externally and internally. Then about the properties, when we talk about epithelial tissues which lies on the basement membrane, which are closely connected each other. That means gap between the cells is very, very less. The gap between the cells is very less. That what you say, they are compactly packed and with a little intercellular matrix. They are compactly packed with a little intercellular matrix. So that to be remembered over. And that they are the properties of the epithelial tissue. Lies on basement membrane, compactly packed with a little intercellular matrix or no intercellular matrix. So epithelial tissue is based on the presence of layers on that. We said already that all the epithelial tissues lies on basement membrane. They lie on the basement membrane. So if only one row of cells are present, we call that as single layered. That is said to be simple epithelium. One row of cells are present, we say such an epithelium as simple epithelium. Then if multiple layers are present, that means two or more layers if they are present, we call such as compound epithelium or multi-layered epithelium. Compound or multi-layered epithelium, which we can say. Okay, so the simple and compound. Let's talk about this. Simple epithelium, as we already said, composed of a single layer of cells. It lines the cavities, ducts, body cavities, ducts and tubes. Simple epithelium that of a single layer of cells which lines the body cavities, ducts and tubes. Okay. So simple epithelium further classified into simple squamous, simple cuboidal and simple columnar. Simple squamous, simple cuboidal and simple columnar. Okay. Simple squamous. Let's talk about the simple squamous epithelium. So where it is present. Simple squamous. First of all, let us see the properties of the simple squamous epithelium. The simple squamous epithelium The cells are arranged like the tiles of floor, lies on the basement membrane as usual. That cells are arranged like the tiles of floor. Okay, so like this, that get arranged like the tiles of floor. We say simple squamous. See the diagram. The diagram will come as usual in examination. The flattened cells, a thin layer of flattened cell with irregular boundaries. They found in the walls of blood vessel. That means we call it as technically endothelium of blood vessel. We say it as endothelium of blood vessel. Air sacs, that means alveoli, are composed of simple squamous epithelium. Okay, then simply we say it as it forms a diffusion boundary. That means the diffusion of air, that air in the alveoli of lungs, in the diffusion of excretory wastes in the Bowman's capsule, that we can say in that manner. It acts as a diffusion boundary. So properties of the squamous epithelium to be remembered as thin layer of flattened cells with irregular boundaries found in the walls of blood vessels and air sacs of lungs, and it forms a diffusion boundary. Cuboidal epithelium, simple cuboidal epithelium, the composed of cube-like cells. Simple cuboidal epithelium is going to be composed of cube-like cells. You see in the diagram, these are the cube-like cells. When we draw, we'll draw like this. Let me take the color. Then above on the basement membrane, cube-like cells are present. Okay, so cube-like cells with the nucleus. So that simple cuboidal, it's itself there in the name. In case of simple squamous, we said flattened cell. Now in the cuboidal, cube-like cells are present. They're found in the ducts of glands and tubular parts of nephron. To be remembered, examples are very important in the series. The found in the ducts of glands and the tubular parts of nephron. Function is also going to be the question here. The function is secretion and absorption. To be remembered, simple squamous, we said it acts as a diffusion boundary. Cuboidal, simple cuboidal, we say secretion and absorption. Secretion and absorption. Examples. As we already said, the Bowman's capsule of the nephron is composed of simple squamous. Now we are moving with simple cuboidal epithelium. It is there in proximal convoluted tubule and distal convoluted tubule. In case of proximal convoluted tubule is having the brush border. We can say it as brush border. That means the simple cuboidal epithelium there is having small microvilli which enhances the area of absorption of water. So that's why particularly we say proximal convoluted tubule of the nephron has microvilli. And to be remembered, distal convoluted tubule is also made up of simple cuboidal epithelium that also contain simple cuboidal epithelium. Okay, so that let me close this about the properties of the simple cuboidal epithelium. Simple cuboidal epithelium composed of cube-like cells found in the ducts of glands and the tubular parts of the nephron, and that functions as secretion as well as absorption. It functions as secretion and absorption. Why I'm repeating? Because every sentence is already questioned in previous examinations. Very small area, according to NCRT, very small area, but that more productive area in the form of examination. As I already said to you earlier, that bigger topics are removed. So weightage will be increased for this particular chapter, structural organization and animal kingdom. That as usual, human physiology is always having the greater weightage, but for coming examination, these particular epithelial tissues may play a vital role. So that's why be careful and follow the sentences. Composed of tube-like cell found in the ducts of glands and tubular parts of nephron, that means proximal and distal convoluted tubule, and function as secretion and absorption. The epithelium of proximal convoluted tubule, especially we are saying, they have microvilli, they have microvilli. And then now let's move on to the columnar epithelium, simple columnar epithelium. So here they're composed of tall and slender cells. The simple columnar epithelial cells are tall and slender cells with the nucleus is at the base. That tall and slender cells here, the columnar epithelial cells. Okay, so these are the cells which lies on basement membrane on one side as usual, which is a property of epithelial tissue. And the nuclei is located at the base. Nuclei is getting located at the base. The free surface may have microvilli. If you take the intestine, in case of intestine, the microvilli are itself composed of, the microvilli are composed of this particular epithelium itself. That means here that inner lining of in stomach and intestine, particularly in the intestine, the columnar epithelial cells are going to form microvilli. So that to be remembered. Free surface may have microvilli. Where it is, that is in the intestine. Okay. So that makes what? That makes what? Absorption of digested food material. So location we are talking about found in the lining of stomach and intestine. And functions. Function, secretion and absorption. Function is secretion as well as absorption. Secretion and absorption to be remembered over. That means the various places. In the case of stomach, that columnar epithelium acts as glandular cells, that they secrete HCl, they secrete pepsinogen likewise. In case of intestine, the same columnar epithelium, they secrete and also they absorb the digested food material. So that's why we say it is for secretion as well as absorption. Modification of columnar or cuboidal cells. Sometimes the free surfaces bear cilia. Cilia bear cells bear columnar epithelial, cuboidal epithelial, mostly columnar, are having cilia. You see here, the free surface is having cilia. So present in the inner surface, where you see this? In the inner surface of hollow organs like bronchioles and fallopian tubes in the female. That bronchioles, when we talk about the bronchioles, the branches of trachea in the respiratory system, we can say that the bronchi will be further branched as bronchioles. So there this contains cilia. So they use it to stop the dust particles. Okay, when it comes to the fallopian tube, in the case of fallopian tube, this particular acts as per the movement of ovum towards the fallopian tube. For what it is? Fertilization. So it is in case of, exactly in case of female. Fallopian tube is the respective character of the female. Then next, the to move particles. What is the function? To move particles. As we talk about to move particles, like the movement of ovum. In case of female during that fertilization process. So the to move particles are mucus in a specific direction over the epithelium. Particles and mucus. Mucus, when we talk about, that is the function of bronchioles, we can say. Okay. Or we can say that this kind of thing is present in the ventricles of the brain. There, the cerebrospinal fluid is going to move with the help of movement of this cilia. Okay, so that's it about the ciliated epithelium. So in every aspect, you have to remember one is the example, where it is, another is function. Example and function. Now, moving on. Based on the function, we have based on the structure we already completed, squamous, cuboidal, and columnar. So based on their function, we are now moving on glandular epithelium. Cells specialized for the secretion, we can say. So based on that, we say unicellular and multicellular. If a single cell doing this particular secretion, we say unicellular. The group of cells are doing, we call multicellular. You see here, this in this case, unicellular gland, you can see here. Here the multicellular gland, multiple cells are gathered and doing an activity. So multicellular gland. Okay. Example for the unicellular gland, that consists of isolated glandular cell, the goblet cells of the alimentary canal, we can say. Multicellular consists of clusters of cells. Example, salivary gland. Salivary gland is an example. Okay. So that's it about the glandular epithelium. Glandular epithelium. Next, based on the mode of powering of their secretions. How do they secrete out? That means a cell prepares the secretion, that how do that particular secretion will come out. So based on that, we have to talk about, this is a cell which is a glandular cell, some secretion happen inside, so that how do they release? Do they are releasing outside the gland, or they are releasing inside the gland in that way? For example, if you take a particular gland, so this is the gland, the secretions are secreting itself inside the gland. The secretions are itself inside the gland, and someone should come. Someone means who will come? Blood vessels branched in the form of capillaries, and capillaries will collect them. We call such kind as endocrine glands. There is no special ducts to them. There is no special ducts. The gland secretes secretions inside only. They are collected by the blood capillaries. What do you say it as? Endocrine glands or ductless glands. That generally they are going to be hormones. What is exocrine gland? Exocrine gland. If you take the gland, the glandular secretions are collected by the small ducts, and all the ducts are going to be become a bigger duct, and that duct will be either a hepatic duct or pancreatic duct, or a duct from the lacrimal gland, or ducts of the salivary gland, whatever it may be. That all we say exocrine glands. They release the secretion through the ducts, through the tubes. Exocrine glands secrete maybe mucus or saliva or earwax. Earwax in case of ear. Oil, sebaceous glands, milk, digestive enzymes. So in different places, the different kinds of secretions, all this is from exocrine. Properties to be remembered over. What are the properties? Exocrine secretions are going to be secreted through the ducts. Endocrine, no special ducts. Blood vessels are required to transport them. Exocrine, maybe saliva or mucus or earwax, except hormones. Simply you have to remember, except hormones. Endocrine is just to be, say, hormones. Okay. Next, moving on. Compound epithelium. The composed of multicellular layer. You see here that more than two layers are present. So that's why, what do you say? Multi-layered cells. The compound or stratified epithelium. That very important to be remembered. They don't have much role in secretion and absorption. In cuboidal and columnar, we said they are secretion and absorption. But compound epithelium is mostly for protection, not for secretion, not for absorption. So that is very important property to be remembered over. Limited role in secretion and absorption. They cover the dry surface of the skin, the moist surface of buccal cavity, pharynx, inner lining of ducts of salivary glands and pancreatic ducts. Then function protection against chemical and mechanical stresses. The function against chemical and mechanical stresses. Okay. So if you take compound epithelium, we have stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. Stratified squamous keratinized. Stratified squamous keratinized epithelium is present in the skin. In that uppermost layers of the cells are squamous, and that squamous cells will die. We call it as keratinization. We call that process as keratinization, just for knowledge to be remembered. We call such kind of cells as stratified squamous keratinized. The skin, dry surface of the skin. Okay. Next, stratified squamous non-keratinized. Stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. In case of stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium, we'll find that non-keratinized. That means uppermost layer is squamous as usual, and they don't die, no keratinization. So where you see this, that moist surface of buccal cavity, pharynx, we can see this particular stratified squamous non-keratinized. Stratified cuboidal. The cube-like cells are present in the multiple layers. We say stratified cuboidal. So that stratified cuboidal epithelium is present in the pancreatic ducts, inner lining of ducts of salivary glands, Likewise, inner lining of ducts of salivary glands and pancreatic ducts, stratified cuboidal. As a whole, you can remember it as a compound epithelium, particularly stratified squamous keratinized epithelium skin, stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium in the moist surface of buccal cavity, pharynx, inner line, the pharynx. Then stratified cuboidal, inner lining of ducts of salivary glands and pancreatic ducts. That's all about the compound epithelium. Here, examples play the role. In case of animal tissues, specialized junctions which provide both structural and functional link between the individual cells. So that means one cell connected to the another cell. A cell is connected to the another cell. How do they connect it? In what way they are connected? So that is going to be very important. If they are very closely connected each other, they are very closely connected each other. For example, I'll show the gland here. These are the cells of epithelium which are very closely, tightly packed each other. For what? For what they get tightly packed each other? Not to make the fluid out. That means to help to stop the substances from leaking. It is to help to stop the substances for leaking across a tissue. Tight junctions help to stop substances from leaking across a tissue. So this is tight junction where the cells are closely arranged each other. The cells getting closely arranged each other. Okay. Next, moving on. Adhering junctions. So just keep in mind while I'm explaining this particular, every sentence is going to be questioned. Why? Because this is a revision program here that we are focusing only on NCRT textbook, exclusive NCRT textbook. So the sentences, the lines are going to be only on NCRT textbook basis. So that's why the pattern is running through the NCRT textbook. So when it comes, then examination point of view, in the examination point of view, so these lines, these are going to be very, very important, that every sentence, every line is going to be question for us. Every line is going to be question for us. Okay. So now moving on. Adhering junctions. They perform cementing to keep neighboring cells together. Adhering junction, they perform the cementing the neighboring cells together. Okay. We call it as zonula adherence. Next, gap junction. We have a best example from our syllabus. Cardiac muscle fiber. One cardiac muscle fiber is connected with the another cardiac muscle fiber with the help of gap junctions. One cardiac muscle fiber to the another cardiac muscle fiber, because the cardiac muscle fiber need to work collectively. They need to work collectively. So one cardiac muscle fiber is connected with another cardiac muscle fiber, that with the help of gap junctions we have to see. So that means we say this as a functional syncytium. Talking about heart, cardiac muscle fiber, they work together by exchanging the ionic calcium ions. So we say that process as functional syncytium. That now let's see the gap junction that correlate with that particular. Facilitate the cells to communicate with each other by connecting the cytoplasm of adjoining cells for the rapid transfer of ions and molecules. For example, in case of cardiac muscle fiber, one cell to the another cell, the transfer of calcium ions must that transfer is required, transport is required. Why? Because to transfer the muscle contraction, heartbeat, to one cell to the other cell, that gap junctions are required. So that based on the requirement, we have tight junctions, we have adhering junctions, we have gap junctions. We call them as collectively as cell junctions. We say them as cell junctions. So that's all about the epithelial tissue. As I said to you that need to remember the examples and their performance, function, what kind of function they perform. Okay, next, let's start. The connective tissue. The connective tissue. In case of connective tissue, it's there in the name. As before I go, that I do remember you once again the properties of the epithelial tissue. We said in case of epithelial tissue that the cells are very closely arranged each other, isn't it? Intercellular matrix is very less. But in case of connective tissue, that connective tissue, the gap between the cells is going to be comparatively more. Gap is more in between the cells. That means we say intercellular matrix is going to be much more. That is the basic difference. And origin point of view, epithelial tissues are going to origin embryonic ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. When it comes to the connective tissue, all the connective tissues are originated from only mesoderm. All the connective tissues get originated only from mesoderm. That is one of the other things to be remembered. Okay, now let's start the properties that links and support other tissues and organs. The most abundant in complex animals like human being. Then in all connective tissues except blade, in all connective tissues except blade, the cells like fibroblast cells, we are talking about the fibroblast cells secrete either collagen fiber or elastin fiber, that fibrous proteins we say. These collagen fiber and elastin fibers are going to provide strength, elasticity, and flexibility to the tissues based on the presence of components that strength, elasticity, flexibility is going to come for that particular tissues. Okay, except blade, all the connective tissues are having these collagen and elastin fibers which are secreted from the fibroblast cells. The cells also secrete modified polysaccharides. The cells also secrete modified polysaccharides, which accumulate between the cells and fibers and act as a matrix. The gap between the cells, we already said, the gap between the cells, that intercellular matrix, we use it to say, that intercellular matrix. Now let's continue here. The properties, the characteristic features of connective tissue. Basically, connective tissue getting classified into three: loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue, and specialized connective tissue. Loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue, and specialized connective tissue. Loose connective tissue. Loose connective tissue is areolar tissue. Adipose tissue, areolar tissue and adipose tissue can be considered as loose connective tissue. Dense connective tissue, further classified into dense regular and dense irregular. Dense regular connective tissue and dense irregular connective tissue. Then specialized connective tissue, cartilage, bone, and blade. Cartilage, bone, and blade. We use it to say. Okay. So now let's see one after another. First of all, we'll go with the loose connective tissue. In case of loose connective tissue, it's there in the name, isn't it? That the cells, gap between the cell to the cell is going to be comparatively more. That means the spaces in between them are said to be areola. That of the particular spaces which are present in between them are said to be areola, air spaces. Such kind of tissue we say particularly as a areolar tissue. Cells are loosely aggregated, the first thing to be remembered, and in between them, the semi-fluid ground substance is present along with some fibers that you can see in the diagram. This is a text diagram. We get this question in examination directly. And they'll ask you to identify. So we identified here now, areolar tissue. And cells identification type questions also may come here. See this. This is the mast cells. Okay, and these are the adipocytes, the yellow color, which ring-like the cells. That means a large lipid droplet is present here with nucleus they pushed outside, and amoeboid-like cells, macrophages. This is the macrophage. Okay, so need to focus here. When you're reading the textbook, you need to focus in this area. These are fibroblast cells. The green one, fibroblast cell. You can see there. The fibroblast cell secretes the fibers. In this case, collagen fibers you can see in the diagram. Okay, some blood cells are also present here. Moving on, areolar tissue. The areolar tissue present beneath the skin, it serves as a support framework for epithelium. By diagram, we may get the diagram as a question in examination, or this is the sentence to be remembered. It serves as a support framework for epithelium. It supports as a support framework as for epithelium. From the beginning, the sentence, why? If I read 2, 3 times, that means that is very, very, very important. We get in examination. Okay, so much more complex questions won't come here. That basic, simple type of questions like the cells which are in absorption and secretion, the epithelium which is in protection, the particular connective tissue which acts as a support framework for epithelium. So that's why if you see our schedule, in the end of the schedule, I made it as keywords, discussion of the keywords. That means we should not read like a newspaper. When we are reading, if you read like a newspaper, it won't help for us when we started writing an examination, some 100 questions, 200 questions. Biology should not stop with 10, 15 questions, 45 questions. A student should work with 100 questions a day minimum, any chapter, either botany or zoology. So that 100 questions per minimum till the examination, till the NEET examination. A student, before their sleep, should ask himself the question whether I completed 100 questions today or not. So that is very important. Okay, at the time when we see this, that means our reading pattern will help us to recognize. If a question will find that the tissue which serves as a support framework for epithelium, what is that? Areolar tissue. Or you may get answer loose connective tissue. You may find an option connective tissue. That means the surface level question answer connective tissue. Little go inside loose connective tissue. Much deeper areolar tissue. In that way. Then let's see, adipose tissue located mainly beneath the skin. Adipose tissue is located mainly beneath the skin, and the cells of this tissue, adipose tissue, where they store fats and that they store fats. You can see here a single oil droplet, monomolecular lipid droplet. We use it to say it as monomolecular lipid droplet. Okay, so that means a large cell which contain a single oil droplet that pushes the nucleus on one side. We say this as this kind of tissue as white adipose tissue. Okay, so then excess nutrients are converted into fats and stored in the tissues. That is the story of loose connective tissue, which include areolar tissue, adipose tissue, and properties to be remembered. The tissue with support framework for epithelium serves as a support framework for epithelium. Areolar, the tissue, the connective tissue used for the storage, adipose tissue. In that way. Okay, so straight away, single question. This diagram will be given over in examination. So they ask you to recognize. You see the fat storage area, monomolecular lipid droplet. Technically, we say they push the nucleus one side. Fully mature adipocyte nucleus will be on one side, and this is just plasma membrane. A cell it is. As usual, plasma membrane can be seen over. Dense connective tissue. About the dense connective tissue, the fibers and fibroblasts are compactly packed. The fibers and fibroblasts are compactly packed. That in this, it's there in the name, dense connective tissue. That means a property of connective tissue, we know cells are loosely arranged. In between that particular cells, the large number of fibers are present here. What type of fibers are present? Based on that, tissue can be seen over. That collagen fibers I am drawing here, the collagen fiber, the large number of collagen fibers get arranged, which makes dense. So the word dense mean here arrangement of fibers, large number of fibers. Okay. In case of areolar connective tissue, as usual, cells are present, but that in between the cells, fibers are going to be comparatively less. Okay, the fibrous dense connective tissue further classified into dense regular connective tissue and dense irregular connective tissue. Okay, let's see one after another. The dense regular connective tissue. Dense regular connective tissue. Here, see the diagram again. These diagrams are we are going to get in examination. Okay, so this is dense regular connective tissue. That means here the fibers are arranged in a regular manner. The fibers, collagen fiber, arranged in the regular manner, we say dense regular connective tissue. Then collagen fibers are arranged in rows between many parallel bundles of fibers. You can see here. We have two types of dense regular tendons and ligaments. Tendons and ligaments. What are tendons? Tendons which connect, which attach the skeletal muscle to the bones. Attachment of the muscle, skeletal muscle to the bone is tendon. One bone is connected to the another bone with the help of ligaments. Here it is, tendon connecting the bone to the muscle, ligaments which connecting the bone to the bone. Dense irregular connective tissue. Earlier we are seeing the patterns, now you see here that irregular arrangement of the fibers. Fibers are getting arranged irregularly here. You can see the fibers are getting arranged irregularly. That these dense irregular connective tissue, irregular pattern of fibroblast cells, mostly fiber, the collagen fibers even present here. We can see this tissue in the present below the skin, In so many areas are there, periosteum of bone, perichondrium of cartilage, that endosteum of bone, our dura mater of the brain. Simply we say except lungs, almost all the body internal organs are covered with this dense irregular connective tissue for protection point of view, in the point of view of protection. Next, specialized connective tissue. Specialized connective tissue. Here even, all these are NCRT diagrams. First of all, specialized connective tissue will go with the cartilage. In this, the intercellular material is solid, pliable. See, remember this property? Solid and pliable. Intercellular material in case of cartilage is solid and pliable, which resists the compression. Solid, pliable, and resists the compression. Next, the cells, cartilage. The cells of cartilage.
కళ్ళు కనిపిస్తలే కదా సర్వీస్ అయిపోయిందా
The cells of cartilage are said to be chondrocytes. The cells of cartilage are called as chondrocytes, which are enclosed in small cavities. The cartilage cells or chondrocytes are enclosed in the small cavities. Yes, correlate with the diagram. We have that cells are chondrocytes within the matrix secreted by them. That this is the matrix secreted by these cells only. So in that particular matrix, that particular cells are going to present. Most of the cartilages in vertebrate embryos are replaced by bones. We have our endoskeleton during embryonic stages is the cartilage, but adult we have bone. Cartilage is present in the tip of nose, outer ear joints between the bones of the vertebral column and the limbs in adults. Just for information, the tip of nose, hyaline cartilage we say. External ear pinna, outer ear is elastic cartilage. That the joint between the bones of the vertebral column and limbs in adult, that is fibrous cartilage. No need to remember. Just hyaline, elastic, fibrous. Not like that. Just remember it as cartilage. That's all. Okay, bones. We have a hard, non-pliable ground substance. Non-pliable property here. Non-pliable ground substance rich in calcium salts and collagen fiber, which gives the bone its strength. The calcium salt like Ca10, PO4, taken 6, OH taken twice. We say it as calcium phosphate or calcium hydroxy apatite. We can say it as calcium phosphate or calcium hydroxyapatite. That is simply we say in the form of calcium salts. But property to remember, non-pliable ground substance. It is non-pliable ground substance. Okay, the chondrocytes we call the cartilaginous cells. The bone cells are called osteocytes. These osteocytes as well present in the empty space is called lacunae. We say it as lacunae, the empty spaces. Functions. It provides the structural frame to the body. It provides structural frame to the body. Okay. Then we have to make the notes here when we start from epithelial tissue onwards. That function is playing a vital role, isn't it? Example, where it is located. Find function. If you make two columns like this, that almost the histology will be over. That's so simple to say. That search for the functions and search for the examples. That's all. It provides structural frame to the body, support and protect the softer tissues and organs. It support and protect the softer tissues and organs. The limb bones, leg bones we say, they serve weight bearing function, take part in locomotion and movement. Blood cells are produced in bone marrow. That red bone marrow is there, that is going to produce a blood, that particular blood cells. They're all said to be the functions of the bone. It provides structural frame to the body, support and protects softer tissues. And limb bones have weight bearing function, take part in locomotion and movement. Blood cells are produced in the bone marrow. Now, moving on. Blood. So specialized connective tissue, blood, a fluid connective tissue containing plasma, red blood cell, white blood cells, platelets. We can say blood. What is the function of the blood? Helps in the circulation of various substances. That helps in the circulation of various substances. So then muscular tissue, the series, the thought tissue, we can say muscular tissue. In the series, muscular tissue. Okay, so what is muscular tissue? We said the muscle, simply we say muscles. Muscles are derived from mesoderm. As I said to you, epithelial tissue derived from all the three germ layers. That what do you say? Ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm. Connective tissue is derived from mesoderm, and then again muscular tissue is also derived from mesoderm. Each muscle is made of muscle fibers. If you say muscle tissue, that muscle fiber can be considered as muscle cell. Muscle fiber is considered as muscle cell. Okay. The muscle fibers composed of numerous fine myofibrils. In each muscle fiber, that numerous myofibrils are present. Many myofibrils are present. Okay, then muscle fibers can contract. These muscle fibers can contract and also they relax. Contraction and relaxation is the property of muscle fibers. Okay, so muscles takes part in locomotion and movements. Muscle takes part in locomotion and movements. So we have three types of muscles: striated, skeletal, striped or voluntary muscle, then smooth or non-striated or visceral muscle, and cardiac muscle. We have the three types of muscle. Skeletal, we need to know the meaning of that particular muscle, why it is called like so. We should know the meaning. So first of all, let us see here. Why it is called skeletal? Why these muscles are called skeletal? These muscles attach to the bones. The muscles which attach to the bones, that's why we say the muscles attach to the bones. We already learned that attachment of the muscle to the bone is possible by tendons. So which muscle? These muscles only, striated muscles which attach to the bone. What do you say? It has tendons. Next, why these are called striated? That is another thing you should say. Striated muscles. The reason to say them as striated muscle. You see here that this is a muscle fiber. In this muscle fiber, so many myofibrils are present, and these myofibrils are having striations. Striations are present. That makes arrangement of dark and light bands. We are going to learn this in that musculoskeletal system chapter. Simply the basics we are teaching here. The striations, why they come, that why dark and light bands appear, we'll see. But presence of striations, we call such kind of muscle as striated muscle or striped muscle. Next, why they are called voluntary muscles? They are in our will or control. That's why we say voluntary muscles. So, meaning of each and everything we should know here. Okay, don't know so many bigger questions here. Simply this circle is going to be question. Muscles attached to the bone, muscle fibers are having striation, and muscles in our will or control. Next, smooth muscles. The thick and thin filaments are arranged irregularly. That's why you don't find any striations. We say them as smooth muscles. Okay, so spindle shaped cells these are that no arrangement of thick and thin filaments regular. That's why no striations we can say. That's why we call smooth or non-striated muscle. They are mostly present in the visceral organ, hence we call visceral muscle. Visceral organs like stomach, intestine, that means whatever in the abdomen, viscera. So visceral organs. That's why we say them as visceral muscle. Cardiac muscle means muscles in the heart wall, myocardium of the heart. We say cardiac. And these muscles are also called involuntary because they are not in our control. These are also, smooth muscles are also involuntary muscles. So smooth or non-striated, or visceral or involuntary. Here, the cardiac muscle. So we say striated, involuntary. Cardiac muscles are striated, involuntary. Let's see one after another. There is in the form of differences. We are going to see this. The skeletal, striated or striped or voluntary. They are attached to the skeletal bones. For example, biceps. Striations are present. You can see in the diagram. Muscle fibers are bundled together in a parallel fashion. A sheath of tough connective tissue encloses the several bundles of muscle fibers. We call it as epimysium. Muscles are arranged in the form of bundles is a property of skeletal muscle. All the bundles are surrounded by an irregular dense fibrous connective tissue sheath. We call it as epimysium. That we'll discuss in musculoskeletal system. Then smooth muscle, involuntary and fusiform fibers, taper at both ends and no striations at all. The cell junctions hold them together and they are bundled together in a connective tissue sheath. The cell junctions hold them together and they are bundled together in a connective tissue sheath. They are seen in the wall of internal organs such as blood vessels, stomach, and intestine. Hence, we call visceral muscles, isn't it? Cardiac. These are involuntary muscle. There is no our will or control cannot work on them. Cell junction fuse the plasma membrane of the cells and make them stick together, as we said there. That every cell connected with the another cell seems to be they are together. Okay, we call it as functional syncytium. According to Guyton, cardiac muscle fibers working together, function together. We call functional syncytium. Then communication junctions, we say intercalated discs. These are intercalated discs. Or gap junctions, we can see. Allow the cells to contract as a unit. When one cell receives a signal to contract, its neighbor cells are also getting contracted. So that is a property of cardiac muscle fibers. So finally, neural tissue. The tissue for control and coordination. Neural tissue is for control and coordination. Neurons, which we say units of neural system, then are excitable cells. These are neurons are excitable cells. And neurons are protected by the surrounding cells, we say neuroglial cells. That neurons having the property of nervous, and surrounding the neuron, we have some neuroglial cell like Schwann cell, oligodendrocyte, astrocyte, ependyma cells, other than nervous property. We say that as neuroglial cells. The neuroglia make up one half of the volume of neural tissue, more than one half of the volume of neural tissue. Small problem. Yeah. When a neuron is stimulated, an electrical disturbance impulse is generated. It travels along its plasma membrane. Technical issues we'll discuss in chapter neural control and coordination itself in the NCRT +1. So that's it. That is all about the neural tissue, and we have some organ and organ system grade of organization as tissues. Tissues, how the tissues are found, we are seeing now. The group of cells are morphologically similar in shape and size, and origin is same. We call tissues. The tissues become organ become organ systems, which helps in the better coordinated cellular activities. Each organ is made of one or more types of tissues. You see on the screen, we'll find the heart. We are seeing from the beginning that heart. Heart is surrounded by that fibrous pericardium, which is made up of irregular, dense, fibrous connective tissue. You see, in the heart and the blood vessels are present. In the blood vessel, smooth muscles are present. In the blood vessel, smooth muscle, heart itself made up of cardiac muscle. Okay, so that means that heart contain epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue, nervous tissue. What are the epithelial tissue present in the heart? We said endothelium of the blood vessels and endothelium of the heart is having simple squamous epithelium. We can say in that way it is having, and the peritoneal layers are made up of simple squamous epithelium. Connective tissue. What is the connective tissue present in the heart? Blood itself, the connective tissue. We can see in the heart, isn't it? Must that blood vascularization, fully vascularized, isn't it? Next, muscular tissue. The cardiac muscles are present in the heart. And also the vessels are having smooth muscles. Blood vessels, tunica media of blood vessels are having smooth muscle. There is an innervation of sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system along with the somatic nervous system. That's why we say nervous tissue is also present. That's why this sentence can be justified. Each organ is made of one or more types of tissues. Any organ you take in the body, we can say that that kind of we can see that kind of generation of many tissues. One organ is made up of many tissues. There you can see. Okay, so this is all about the histology. Histology. So this kind of revision will help us when we are reading in the NCRT textbook. The same sentences, whatever there in NCRT textbook, the same sentences are getting used here. So definitely it will be helpful for that particular topic here. But want to see that if you are listening it for first time, I don't give any guarantee you will understand this. As I already said, this is the revision program. Just only for revision, only for revision. But if you want to see the full details, that full explanation, I'll show you where to see that full explanation, individual explanation. We have 29 uh, series of videos here about the structural organization in animals, explaining the structural organization in animals. We have 29 videos. So I'll give how to see them. That first of all need to say the Neet Srikanth. In that go to the click on the photograph and we have the playlist, and in the playlist we have a separate playlist for structural organization in animals. Structural organization in animals. I'll show you the structural organization in animals. So in that playlist, that individual explanation, the detailed explanation of everything we'll find here. So if you click on here, you'll find that exclusive explanation of the total topic. That means we itself for the blade we took two 1.5 hour. For blade itself we took 1.5 hour. That means 2 classes. So that's why. So we start from symmetry, coelom, epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue. Here you see that all the basics required for the blade we are shown. So this is the actual detailed explanation of the muscular tissue. The differences wise we framed it out, but at present we are doing revision, just revision. This is the revision. So that means at the time only we'll focus on NCRT issues only in the revision program. So that those are first time it is. If you are not focused earlier, so that must here you have to watch the total. Okay. So that need to search as Neet Srikanth. Then after you'll find the playlist. In the playlist, you see the series of videos which explains in detail. The total, all that particular issues are explained in detail.